Old School Bodybuilding Clothing Company. If leg day was yesterday and now you're wondering why toilets are so damn low, you are definitely old school. If you're the only athlete at your gym that knows there's a contest today and it's to see who trains the hardest, you are old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
After working hard at the gym, you need a mattress that works as hard as you do. Spinalign has engineered the perfect mattress for you and your active lifestyle. Don't compromise your recovery with inferior sleep. Order your Spinalign mattress today.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, news, anything and everything in and outside of the bodybuilding world is all on the table. We are now 2 weeks away from Olympia weekend. We are in the thick of the Iron Road to the Olympia. We have interviews that have already gone up. Off the top of my head, Kamal El-Garni, Shanique Grant, 2 champions in their own rightful divisions. Dan Solomon from last week giving us all the latest information about the Olympia, which of course was announced last week that it has moved to Orlando. I'm not going to give away any names because whenever we do that, we get snake bitten, but we have a lot of guests and a lot of content upcoming over the course of the next few days as we now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, this is where it starts to get crazy over the next 2 weeks as we lead into Olympia weekend in quite possibly one of the craziest years in recent memory.
I really hope no other year tops this year because I don't know if anyone could take it because it was so crazy. But hey, we are having an Olympia, and that's the most important thing when it's all said and done. And you know, this is the exciting time of the year. Obviously, usually it's in September. Now it's in December. For a lot of people, they're going to be able to go and leave the cold of their northern homes and go and watch the Olympia in beautiful Orlando. Although it is a little chilly here in Florida today, but chilly here is very warm anywhere else. So, to me, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they got a really good lineup in all the divisions. I know a lot of people dropped out, but that happens. That could happen any year. But I think we have a solid show where people are going to be excited about, hey, yeah, Brandon's Mr. Olympia, but maybe he won't win. Usually when Mr. Olympia is sitting in that seat, it's a foregone conclusion that he's probably going to, repeat. This year, not so much because this is Brandon's first title defense. Obviously, Phil Heath coming back. He wasn't in the show last year. And then, of course, Hadi looking like he's going to make it over here. He was the People's Champ. You have Bonac and Winkler and Ramy in that lineup. I mean, it's actually a really good lineup. And the 212, I got news for you, might even be more competitive than the Open. And then, of course, you got the classic battle between Breon Ansley, who's made incredible improvements, and Chris Bumstead. So in the bodybuilding, at least, divisions, it's great. And let's not leave men's physique out. Andre Ferguson versus his good friend Ray Edmonds, who've been trading back and forth. So that, to me, is the sign of something that's exciting when you're coming up. We got something to look forward to. They're going to live stream it. Everyone's going to be able to see it. Hopefully it's going to be a great production, especially with Jake Wood putting the right money behind that. I think it's going to be a tremendous show, and obviously we'll have troops on the ground. You'll be there. Chris Aceto will be there. I'll be quarantining away, but I'll be reporting from my house. So we have some great coverage coming up. Obviously sponsored by Species Nutrition and Old School Clothing.
So a lot over the course of the next week and a half. Preview segments, Iron Debate segments, and then of course interviews with some of the top Olympians, all coming up. Keep it locked to RxMuscle.com. Let's go to the question. The first two questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, Dave, what's the science behind download and reload carbs before a competition?
Well, a lot of people don't really realize that there is a science. I mean, most people who, carb deplete, while they're dieting, to try to get in shape, it's because when your glycogen levels are low, your body will dip into stored body fat more frequently. Obviously, if you have full glycogen stores, your body has plenty of energy to use. So, low carbs, low insulin output, obviously, lower calories. There's a million benefits of why you lose more weight on low carbs, but when you're trying to, let's say you're in shape at 8 days out. Now, why do guys carb deplete more if they don't really need to? Well, if you have the ability to do that, and some people, if they carb deplete too much, they'll flatten themselves out too much and it'll ruin their look. But for people who can carb deplete, when you go really low carbs, glycogen synthase, which is an enzyme inside the muscle cells that stores glucose as glycogen, which makes the muscles look fuller, obviously. When you restrict carbs like down to almost nothing for 3 days, your glycogen synthase levels, elevate well above what they normally are in the cell. And why is that? Because the cell doesn't know that it's not getting fed enough. It just thinks there's not enough of this enzyme present, and that's why there's not enough glycogen. So you're basically tricking your body. But you can only trick your body for about 72 hours, and then it kind of catches on to what you're doing. So you carb deplete for 3 days. Usually it's like a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then you can load, depending on how much you need and how big you are and how much glycogen your muscles will hold, you can load for 3 days. The advantage is now that you're going to be able to store more glycogen you were before because you have more of this glycogen synthase enzyme present. A lot of people think it's insulin is the key to storing glycogen, but it's really not, because once you get the glucose into the cell, it's got to be stored. If you don't have enough of the storage enzyme there, you can pump all the glucose into the cell you want. It's not going to get stored beyond what you have present. So, the new term deloading, reloading, whatever you want to call it, glycogen depletion, carb loading, there's a million different terms. They all mean the same thing. It is a real scientific phenomenon. When I teach my guru course and my smart personal training course, I explain the theory and the science of carbohydrate loading. Now, for people who are like distance and endurance athletes, they'll carb load like that just to store more glycogen so that when they're running these long races like marathons or they're cycling 100 miles, they have more glycogen in the muscles before they run out. And that's a problem. When you run a 26.2, mile marathon, usually around the 20-mile mark, you run out of glycogen, stored glycogen. If you can store an extra little extra, bit so that you can maybe get to the 22 or 23-mile mark, you'll make it, your energy levels will be better, you'll be able to sustain your pace better, and you'll only have to suffer really the last couple miles as opposed to the last 6 miles, and that's the advantage for endurance athletes.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, always great content. During your career, what was the best nutritional advice you received that changed your bodybuilding career, and who is this advice from?
I think that the best advice I received was probably from another person, was from Dr. Scott Connolly, who explained to me that when I sat him down and we talked, science, that you really can't give your body enough protein. There's like the curve to protein ingestion and muscle accrual is pretty steady, up to a certain point, of course, but most people never got to that point where it leveled off. This was back in the 80s and the early 90s. What he realized was people weren't eating enough protein. So, I went from eating, 250 grams of protein today to 500 grams of protein a day. And, over the course of a year, as I started getting bigger, and my growth curve exponentially went up as well. A lot of people have trouble consuming that much protein. Now, not obviously a 150-pound guy wouldn't need, or girl wouldn't need that much protein, but if you gave them 300 grams of protein, that's a lot of protein for a 150-pound person, they're going to grow better. So that was the best advice. But probably the most useful and I guess unique advice that I got was from myself and just from my own empirical observations about my body, which was that I needed more fat to grow and recover. And I think a lot of people in the early, late 80s, early 90s, even up through the late 90s, were just not eating enough fat. And they weren't really, or they didn't know what kind of fats to eat. They didn't break it down. And I kind of, uncovered this information and started using it for myself and then my clients. And we all realized we were being idiots because fats, and essential fats specifically, are needed in the diet. And you can't, if you restrict them from the diet, you're going to definitely inhibit your body's ability to grow and recover and produce hormones adequately. And so while you can fudge it a little bit, as soon as people started restoring what their body needed, their bodies responded better. And that's just, that's evolution of knowledge, basically in our industry. That's why the bodybuilding industry is light years ahead of the rest of the nutritional industry. And it takes the rest of the industry about 10 years to catch up to the concepts of what bodybuilders were doing. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, great, look, we just found this keto diet. Wow, amazing. Oh, yeah, well, I was doing that 20 years ago. But that's just the way it is. Bodybuilders are on the leading edge. And that's why we make such great progress and why we can manipulate our bodies so easily, because we have a better understanding of functionally what food does to the body.
Let's go to our Instagram question. Again, if you're not already following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time or already haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. As mentioned before, we are in the thick of the Iron Road to the Olympia. And then, of course, in 2 weeks, we will be in Orlando, not Vegas, Orlando, for the 2020 Olympia weekend. We're going to be giving you wall-to-wall coverage, so you're not going to want to miss any of our content over the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, on the big weekend. So hit that notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. Obviously, that helps us. And as always, we thank you for all your support. We're going to breeze through some of these questions. We don't have a lot of time. We have a ton of guests lined up, and I'm going to give a very preemptive shout out to Dave and Tyler for all that they've been doing over the last few days and all they're going to be doing over the course of the next few hours with the guests that we have lined up. Let's go to Mr. Stanity. Good one here. We all know that if Phil Heath wins the Olympia this year, it'll be his 8th Sandow, tying him with Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman. While Haney and Coleman won their 8 Sandows in a row undefeated, Heath wouldn't, having lost after 7. How will this impact his legacy? Will it be, yeah, but he didn't win them all in a row, or he was a fighting champion who lost and came back to win?
Yeah, I think it'll be pegged as a better story because, almost like 8 in a row is boring, as much as that can be. Because what happens is people get sick of seeing you win so many times. When you lose, you kind of like, at first people like, yeah, you lost. And then people want to see the comeback because everyone loves a great comeback, right? You could, even the most look, George Foreman was probably the most hated heavyweight champions when he was winning. And he got knocked out by Ali, and then he came back, whatever it was, 10, 15 years later, and he was the most beloved guy. So I think that Heath, if he wins it again, people will say he's a true champion because he came back and he won it back. And who knows, if he actually wins 9, and continues till next year, that would be even a greater story because he would be the most winningest. A lot of people don't remember, but Iris Kyle, who has the record of the most Olympia wins ever at 10, lost a couple times in the middle there to Linda Murray and to, what's her name? I don't know, I'm drawing a blank here. Oksana Oroquin one year. So she was a true champion because she went a lot of years to get those 10. It wasn't 10 in a row. And now she's coming back again to go for 11 this year now that the Miss Olympia has been brought back. So, there's a lot of great stories. And I like when someone falls off their pedestal, so to speak, and then comes back. I think that's a better story.
Let's go to Chenglar S. Should I focus on my weight scale every day or just focus on how I look? My weight doesn't go down as much as I expect, but my body composition is improving.
Yeah, it's all about how you look. That's why, when I have people send me their stats in my update chart that I provide with them, I also want pictures because pictures tell a much better story of what's going on. If they're also, if your waist, I always tell people measure your waist. If your waist goes down an inch, but you didn't lose any weight, you obviously lost body fat and maybe you gained some muscle. So while that recomposition doesn't happen in everyone and so dramatically all the time, you will see it, especially in people who, you haven't trained at all, and then they start training and dieting at the same time. So what they're doing is they're putting muscle on while they're losing weight. And you can do that when you haven't worked out. Or even during these COVID times, I've had like a lot of my clients who took off the 6 months, and then they came back to me and they hadn't really worked out at all. And now they're trying to get back in shape, but they're actually gaining weight, but they're losing fat, and you can see the recomposition change. And that's just normal because all that muscle memory issue, that is coming back to them because their bodies want to put back that muscle that they had lost while they're losing body fat, but they're actually gaining muscle at a faster pace. So that's absolutely possible, but don't also use that as an excuse. Oh, I must have gained muscle. That's why I gained 2 pounds this week. When you know very well that you stuffed your face at your cheat meal well above and beyond what you should have done. So you got to be realistic about what's going on.
Got a lot of good questions. There's from Ilya Milos. At shows in the pump-up room, what muscle did you start pumping up first? What exercise did you do?
I've told the story before. I stopped pumping up after I tore a little piece of my pec, some fibers of my pec, backstage at the 1994 NPC Suburban Championships. Gary Stridham was back there warming up. He was guest posing. I was like completely awestruck. He was huge. This is like when he was in his WBF days, and he was like, he was doing like, flies with like 60-pound dumbbells. I'm like, well, if he can do them, I can do them, right? Stupid. I was dehydrated and just dumb. Of course, I felt a little pull in my pec. I was all, upset because I had the Junior USA the next week. I was ready to go for surgery already. Luckily, obviously I didn't need it, but, and after that, I said to myself, why am I even pumping up back here? I'm dehydrated. I'm shredded to the bone. There's no reason to. So what I started doing is I started just posing. Actually, I would hit poses, and as the blood came into the muscle, I pumped up naturally, and I didn't have to subject my body to anything. The biggest mistake people make is pumping up too much backstage, because what happens is when you're actually working out backstage, you're burning glycogen, and when the glycogen leaves the muscle, so does the water, and then what happens is you get flat. So it's very easy to flatten yourself out. Now, some guys will pump up for a long time because they're too full and they're too watery, and they want to get rid of some water. That's a different story, but I do not recommend pumping up a lot. You can do a couple push-ups if you want, but I would if you go through your posing routine and you go through your mandatories a couple times, if you're in shape, you'll be pumped out of your mind. You don't need to do any more.
Dave, let me ask you, in general, in your experience as a coach, do you ever have your clients come to you, you take a final look at them and say, all right, you need to pump up or you need to do this before going on stage?
No, because you know what? Most of my guys or girls are in shape. I don't overcarb anyone, and if someone's holding water, I'll give them a diuretic well before they get to the stage to get that water out. So I'm not waiting until they get backstage to start making, changes to anything or fixing problems. If a person's not in shape, there's very little you can do to help it. There's some people that just get nervous and they get some nervous water going on backstage. Usually, a lot of times it could be due to what happens is your body releases a lot of adrenaline, your blood sugar drops, and they get the cold sweat going on. That's what's happening. It's the low blood sugar sweat, in which case you want to kind of eat a little bit of carbs. Now, the biggest mistake you can make is gorging on carbs backstage, because a lot of times you feel good right after that, and then your insulin releases and you get this huge drop in blood sugar, and then all of a sudden you're out on stage and the water comes pouring. You get that like lightheaded feeling because your blood sugar drops. So don't do crazy things backstage. Try to eat like some starchy carbs rather than just pure sugar, because if you're out there for a long time, your blood sugar will drop from eating pure sugar because it doesn't last that long. If you're out there 10 minutes, it's not going to matter. So I try to give my guys like rice cakes. Sometimes I like rice cakes with some peanut butter on it, just to keep blood sugar stable, not necessarily to do anything crazy.
Let's go to NPH Fit. I'm not going to mention specific names, but he says, why don't you see or hear much from Mr. Olympia winners or just top tier bodybuilders when it comes to gear use, etc.? Why is it always the lower tier guys who are more open about what they use?
Well, I think, at the top, especially Mr. Olympia, these guys want to portray themselves, as good role models, and that's their job. None of these guys, and I've talked to them all, I interview them all, no one's saying I don't use drugs. There's no one out there saying I'm natural. There's a couple of like cuckoo birds who say that, but there's no reason for them to start talking about their cycles, out there, because they're trying to, represent the sport. And I understand that conundrum that goes on. I think with a lot of the guys that are not at the top necessarily, they feel that the honesty approach especially on their social media channels, will make them more popular, which it does. And I think that, and that brings, a certain level of success to them in that sense. So you have to be realistic. I knew I was never going to be Mr. Olympia. I wanted to achieve the highest level of bodybuilding that I could achieve, but I knew I was going to be Mr. Olympia, so I knew that I needed to be an educator, and that was going to be my calling. And so I always was very honest and open about what I did, and I wrote about it in the magazines, how to use performance-enhancing drugs responsibly, because that was my niche I carved out. If I thought I was going to be Mr. Olympia, like Jay, Cutler, I probably wouldn't have talked about it like that. I would have been like him, more politically savvy. Then after your career is over, you can talk about whatever you want because it doesn't matter anymore. So you have to figure out where you fit into this little world of ours and what your role is going to be, and then try to find a niche where you can make money for yourself. Otherwise, you're just kind of spinning your wheels, and I think that's where it comes from.
Let's go to Clement. Do growth hormone releasing peptides downregulate your natural ability to create growth hormone once peptides are removed from the body?
Can you repeat that, Sid?
Yeah. Do growth hormone releasing peptides downregulate your natural ability to create growth hormone once peptides are removed from the body?
The interesting thing about growth hormone and insulin, for that matter, it's interesting, they're kind of similar systems, is they don't really work on a negative feedback loop per se. Negative feedback is like, if you take thyroid, if your body's producing thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary, it's stimulating your thyroid gland to produce T4. T4 then converts to T3, and then the T3 tells your hypothalamus and pituitary, all right, we got enough T3, don't send any more signal. So that's a feedback loop. Now, if you were to take exogenous T3, right, like Cytomel people take, that tells your pituitary gland and hypothalamus, no more signal, we got plenty of hormone, so your natural production shuts down. So that's called the negative feedback loop. They loops back on each other. And then you take away the T3 when you stop using it, and your body starts producing again, because now your body sees no T3, more signal goes down, and your thyroid gland starts producing. The pituitary gland, part of the pituitary that produces GH, doesn't work like that. It's pulsatile, meaning that when you sleep, the pituitary releases GH. After you train, vigorous exercise, your body pulses GH. In low glucose or low blood sugar situations, your body pulses GH. You can't really stop that because it's a natural rhythm. Unless you were infusing yourself on an IV of GH all day long, which you're not going to do, obviously. So you can't stop that. Same thing with insulin. You could take insulin, but your body is constantly monitoring blood sugar, so you can never. It's almost impossible to mimic your natural insulin, production in your body. Now, if you were to do what a type 1 diabetic does, which is to take a long-acting insulin and then at every meal take a short-acting, you would certainly reduce the output of your beta cell insulin production, which is what a lot of people, and I recommend some people do, to give your body a rest if your pancreas is being stressed and overworked. However, you're still going to produce some of your own. So you can't shut down the pituitary production of GH, and you really can't shut down the beta cell production of insulin by taking an exogenous source like you would with testosterone or thyroid hormone. Those are easy axes to shut down because they work by that very simple negative feedback loop. It's not a pulsatile releasive type situation.
Let's try to squeeze in a couple of more. This one from Patrick DeManswazy. It's a question about his father, who's 70 years old, looking for more energy, help with muscle recovery, still does physical labor, has blood pressure issues. Would testolyze be of any help to him?
Absolutely. I have a lot of older people who have called me up at the office here because they don't use computers. They call the office, and I get it, and my wife will put me on the phone, and I'll talk to them, and they're like, telling me how great their testosterone levels are now that they've started using testolyze. And I think in people who are older, it works even better because as we get older as men, we convert more testosterone into DHT. That's probably why we have more hair loss and prostate, irritation and enlargement. We also convert more into estrogen. Okay, so testolyze, because it balances that ratio, keeps more as testosterone, less as estrogen, less as DHT. It seems to work really well as we get older because we see people having better ratios, and these guys are telling me my serum testosterone went from 300 when the range is 250 to 850, up to like 700, 800, just by taking the product. And really what it's doing is it's making your body produce a little bit more of its own, but what it's doing is it's changing the ratio. Because if you produce X amount of testosterone and then 30% converts to estrogen and 30% converts to DHT, you're only left with 40% of what your initial output was. If we can stop some of that conversion, now you have more available to stay as testosterone and do what we want it to do. And that's why the product works so well. And that's why I have guys use it when they go off cycle, because once again, it keeps that ratio better. And it will, once again, by keeping estrogen lower and DHT lower, you'll also raise your natural testosterone level. So once again, it's not necessarily about boosting testosterone. It's about correcting the ratio. And that's why testolyze is probably our number one, well, not our number one, but behind Fiberlyze, one of our number one selling products, because it does work, because I scientifically figured out what needed to be done using which herbal substances to create that ideal ratio. So, give it a shot. I give it to like 16-year-old girls to lower their DHT levels, and it cures the acne. Same thing with young teenage boys, because boys spike DHT levels, and girls also produce DHT a lot. If you're genetically prone to convert your testosterone into DHT, which I definitely am, and it's funny, I found that out when I got my DNA analyzed. You're going to do it your whole life, so you got to stop that excess conversion, okay? Or you're going to have side effects, and you're not going to maximize your body's ability to build and repair muscle, because you're going to lose a lot of your testosterone to other stuff.
Last question is from Mini Breitbart. Do you think that the shorter bodybuilders display a better physique? 212 guys like Hadi and Flex Lewis, now that they're open class, and you mentioned Lee Priest, Franco, Danny Padilla, always seem to hold their own against much bigger guys.
Yeah, you're talking about the handful of anomalies out there. Most smaller guys don't hold their own, and that's why there's only one Lee Priest and there's only one Hadi Chupin. Out of 30, 40 years, one Danny Padilla. There's not many guys that can do it. I mean, David Henry did it back in the day too, but there's not a lot of short guys that can hang in the open class and do really well, because of the fact that they're giving up a lot of height and a lot of mass. Now, if they're put together well and they have really good structure and tie-ins and muscle bellies, Lee Priest was short, but he had a world-class Olympian physique, in the sense that, his arms look like, if you looked at him alone, you thought he was 6 foot tall. And that's something you don't see on a lot of the other 212 guys. They look smaller, they're just more compact and put together well, but they don't look like they're tall. Lee is very proportionate in the way his body flows, and he had a lot of freakiness to his physique. David Henry was the same way. He had, you just couldn't take your eyes off him. Labrada had that going on. Lee Labrada was like in the 180s, on stage, and he was beating, guys, almost beat Lee Haney for the Olympia title. So, but those guys are anomalies. They're genetic freaks. They're structurally also superior to most people out there. Most people don't have that proportion. So a lot of guys go into the 212, and that's where they belong. They're not going to ever be able to hang with the open guys. But I like the fact that guys cross over. I think it's exciting. I think it adds another level of excitement. I think we should have an overall between the 212 and the Open Mr. Olympia. Even if the Mr. Open guy wins every time, who cares? Just put him up there on stage at the end of the Olympia, and let them pose down against each other,
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. We have loads and loads of preview content coming up over the course of the next 2 weeks. Interview upon interview, special guests, and of course, all of our preview segments and iron debate segments over the course of the next 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks, we'll be in Orlando for on-site, wall-to-wall coverage of the 2020 Olympia. For Dave Palumbo and our producer, Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.